Welcome to State of the State. I'm Darlene DeRezzo, and I'm in conversation with Aaron Guckian. He is running for Lieutenant Governor. Welcome.
Yeah. Primaries tomorrow, September 13th.
I have a little quiz here.
Oh boy, here we go.
So much fun to ask a couple of questions here. The Lieutenant Governor has legal power to negotiate economic development deals. True or false?
Negotiate? Well, I would say that I know small business, but we have no power, I know that. So it's basically small business, long-term health care and emergency management. But under the statute, you have no power to negotiate, I believe, under the authority of the state. That would go to the head of state, which would be the governor and or the General Assembly.
Okay, so let's talk about the Lieutenant Governor's position and what you can and cannot do, and how you think you may maybe make a change there?
When I was the special assistant to Governor Carcieri and the First Lady, what I noticed was a lot of lieutenant governors in the past and in the present, they kind of take on big like education, affordable housing and healthcare, and I think that's very admirable. But given the statute and the power of the lieutenant governor, or lack thereof, I should say, I found that I wanted to do a help center. So it's about a $1.2 million budget, 7 to 8 full-time employees. And what happens is when I go to the market, a lot of times you'll have people who are smaller. I'm 6'7", so people will ask me, can you get me the peas on the top and bring it down or something like that? And simple things like that. I want to help people navigate through the state system, through licensing, all those interruptions and impediments that are really preventing progress. I go around the state, and let's say, for example, I talk to diners, people that own diners, I should say, and they have all these licenses. They come at different times of the year in paper envelopes, and their bills, and there's no guidance. And what I think we can do is simply kind of gather these frequently asked questions, get the data, and then manage up to the General Assembly and to the governor's office. Because most legislators and the governor and what have you, they want to do the right thing. But if you present them with smaller things that are really interrupting business, I think that you could probably get some momentum. So for example, if we had a single sign-on, one username and password across all of state government, it would make it a lot easier. The hardest thing, the two probably biggest things that really are detrimental to a small business owner are, one, taking their money, fees, taxes. Sometimes obviously that's necessary, but I think we have an exorbitant amount of fees and taxes. That's something that I would advocate, which is a key word, against, or at least try to lower them. But then also time. When you're taking people's time and there's frustration and they're away from their business and all they're trying to do is figure out when's the license, when's it due, how much is it? I mean, it's just incredible what's going on. So if you take my office and you get 8 people in different specialties, let's say long-term health care, small business and emergency management, you take phone calls and you start to help people. And you give them a timeline, beginning, middle, and end. Some of it might take longer than others. But what I want to document that, and then if you can start getting momentum and start saying to the legislature or whomever, look, I've seen 10 owners of diners that have the same problem, that don't have guidance, can we streamline this? Because I'm sure they'd be much prefer to just pay it all at once, or if, let's say, it's a new business, quarterly.
Why is the guidance so challenging now, though?
Well, it's just, I mean, I was just talking to a guy who owns a liquor store down, and he has a few cash machines.
Okay.
And now they're going to, let's say, from 1 to 3 to 3 to 5. Okay. Well, it's more fees. It's laborious. It's redundant. And why is that happening? I think it's because it's antiquated. I think our state needs to get to, to 2022. And I think one of the things that I have is access to a lot of different people and different talented people, not only locally, but regionally and nationally. And I believe that if you can recruit and or connect with people, they can expedite these types of things and kind of show, all right, and highlight what's going on.
Yeah, so let me ask you about access then. You are running as a Republican?
Yes.
Okay, so
I'm
what?
the endorsed Republican.
Okay, what happens if our governor is Democratic?
Right.
It's a Democrat, and you know, you're knocking on doors, you're looking for access. How is there going to be communication there?
Well, the same thing actually happened with Governor Kucheri and the Lieutenant Governor Charlie Fogarty. Governor Kucheri was a Republican, and the Lieutenant Governor was a Democrat. And that's something that people have talked about, whether it should be a ticket or not. And that can be talked about maybe at the next one.
Actually, what do you think, quickly?
Quickly, I think it makes sense that it's a ticket.
Okay.
When I saw the governor and just the volume that you have to take as a governor, just being kind of the eyewitness to power, if you could pass that off to a lieutenant governor who's qualified and that you already have a relationship with, he or she or they could obviously kind of run with the ball with certain things. Because, you know, when you're a governor, let's say a particular day you're working on education and then some emergency happens, well, that has to go, and let's say you've created the whole day and you have meetings, you have people coming in. Well, if that occurred, you could then have your lieutenant governor head it, and then that governor could take on the crisis at hand. So simple things like that, I think it would be helpful. In regards to your question, you know, I have good relationships with most of the people that are running, or all the people that are running. I know them personally. I grow up in the state. Sometimes you'll disagree. But I do believe that there's really good people working in all the different departments. It's their job to interface with the citizens of Rhode Island, and they want to do a good job. I think that sometimes what's preventing that is you have a small business owner, for example, we'll say in Foster, that's struggling, doesn't know what to do, and you have a person in the back office that does, let's say, the processing. So if they call the lieutenant governor's office, it might be a quick phone call to that person. We'll call that person Jane, let's say the Department of Health. And something that might take that person 6 to 8 weeks might be 5 minutes, could be a day or two. But all those types of streamlining, I'm constantly getting calls when I wasn't running to say, Aaron, could you fix this? Could you help me connect? And it's something because I've grown up here. You know, I was a special assistant to the governor. I was in banking for multiple years, and I worked at the Rhode Island Foundation. I just know a lot of people, and I want to help. So that's what really kind of pushed me to do this.
Yeah, so let's talk about your background.
Well, I grew up here.
Okay.
My parents, my father is a retired Local 51 plumber, and my mom's a respiratory therapist. They're high school sweethearts, or as my grandmother always said, high school sweethearts. They went to Hope High School, and they pursued their professions. And I have one brother, an older brother. I'm really proud of him. He's a great guy. He lives in North Carolina. And my wife is a professor at Johnson & Wales University. She's been there for 20 plus years. I think it's 22. She's entering her 22nd. And I have 3 daughters, 11, 14, and 19. One who's just going to JWU, and then 14, 11 that's at Cole Middle School in East Greenwich.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to Connecticut College. I majored in music.
Oh, so that's interesting. What sparked your interest in politics then?
Well, I'll tell you. So I played trumpet. I was a singer. I minored in well, not politics, but I minored, and also I was certified to teach. So I thought my life was going to go as an opera singer, which it did. I went to the Eastman School, which is, if most people know Juilliard. If Juilliard's the Harvard, Eastman School, George Eastman, the founder of Kodak. It's a very prominent conservatory in the world. And I was one of 10 that was picked to sing. So I had a nice career. I was down south, I was in Italy, and I still sing to this day. A lot of friends that are on the big stage at the Met and different things. But I came back from Italy in my mid-20s, and I had to get my Achilles repaired because I could play college basketball. And at Connecticut College. And
I cannot imagine you playing basketball.
Yeah, right. So being 6'7", we had a great run, and we won my league, and we played in the NCAA tournament. But I guess the point is that I thought I was going to pursue a career in opera, but I got certified to teach in music. So I taught a couple years in North Kingstown, and during the time, I started driving a person named Don Kucheri in the summer. And Don and Sue, the first ladies, I drove them, and they won the primary. Then they won the general, and they asked me to become their special assistant. So I left North Kingstown Public Schools because I was a K through 5 music teacher and took that job on. I did that
Wow.
for 8 years and was very proud of my service. But I think that there's times that you should be in state government or government in general, and then it's time to leave. I don't think there should be a political class, and I don't think you should just keep going because you don't get the perspective. So I was fortunate. I went on to banking. I was at Washington Trust and Bank Newport. I was a business banker. I got my MBA at night, and became a vice president fairly quickly. And I was a branch sales manager in East Greenwich for about a year and a half. And then finally I went to the Rhode Island Foundation where I became a fundraiser. And I raised money with my banking background and knowing the community. They meaning Neil Steinberg and the senior leadership, they hired me. And I became a development officer and I was there for 5 years. Okay. And especially during COVID, but just in general, raising money to do more good for the people out there. It was founded in 1916. It's right downtown in Providence, and it's the largest funder of charities in the state. So I was really proud of my work there for 5 years. I raised $20 million last year. Was in very high-level transactions, wires and what have you, and then just before I had raised a significant amount of money. And the only reason I talk about that is because qualifications matter in this race. I was vice president of a bank. I have a master's in business administration. I also have a master's in music.
So given the limits of the office, how do you think those qualifications are going to aid you?
Well, it's two things, right? We saw the impossible happen, right? Governor Raimondo moved up to the Biden administration. Lieutenant governor took over. So the first question that anyone should go when they go to the ballot box is this person qualified to take over? It's a $13.6 billion budget. And does that person have the financial acumen, the financial background, the leadership skills? I've been in the office. I know exactly what it is. I know exactly everything about the State House because I have relationships there and we were there almost a decade. In addition, I have the finance background and what I just kind of outlaid. That is very, very important. Secondly, to your point, everyone kind of talks about what can the lieutenant governor do. Well, no matter what, they can advocate for the people. They can shine a light. Right now, it's a one-party system, and no one's kind of bringing to the table a lot of the issues that small businesses and people around the state are struggling with. And I can, with the lieutenant governor's office and that pulpit, talk about things that I just, the aforementioned reasons, and keep advocating for things. And I've noticed that especially you can convene, you can get a group of experts together and get one thing and bring that up to the legislature. So it's important.
Okay. So anything else you want to say on economic development before we move on to other issues?
No, I just think it's important that you have a lieutenant governor that has background in that specific area.
Okay.
And, I'm really anxious to get to work and hire a staff that can really propel our small businesses and make it a major focus, because I think it's about 80 to 90% of our businesses are small businesses in the state. What
is the most important issue for you that you want to take on? Or what do you want to take on first?
Well, I think, again, it's what I've learned in my life is sometimes you got to make small changes to get to big change. If I go to a governor in a different party, or if I go to the speaker in a different party and I say I want to change healthcare, well, you're probably not going to get an audience. But if I say with long-term healthcare, well, I'm seeing some issues right now with a pipeline with CNAs and nurses and doctors. And what are ways that we can convene and get some experts? And
what kind of issues are you seeing?
Well, right now you're having CNAs that aren't getting paid enough. They're leaving, they're jumping constantly to different nursing homes because let's just say they're getting paid $19 an hour. Well, across the street it's 20, so they go to the next place. And
right, but do you know how are those contracts negotiated? Those contracts negotiated with the insurance companies?
You mean the CNAs specifically?
Well, the money has to trickle down from somewhere.
The nursing homes are basically all trying to, it's almost like when I was a banker, and any of the bankers out there in Rhode Island will know, There's not a lot of new business happening, right? So you're constantly trying to get that business from a lot of the different banks. So I guess in regards to the CNAs and the licensing and the nursing and the doctors, my biggest thing would be to advocate for them to try to get them incentivized, to try to keep them here, and also the doctors in regards to...
Where is the money coming from to pay those salaries, the CNAs, the nurses, the
Well,
doctors,
right now we're
the
sitting on
therapists?
about $1 billion because we're about the tax revenues in regards to where everything's doubled and tripled, right? Which is one of the reasons I got into this race, which you got to advocate for the person out there in Rhode Island. But the bottom line is, when things double and triple, tax revenue obviously gets higher. So right now, I think they're sitting around about $1 billion. Forget about the $1 billion that they got from the feds. And you can use these monies and create public, private partnerships. You can talk to the universities. You can incentivize these CNAs to not only hopefully advocate for them to get paid a little bit more, but also to say, hey, if you stay at a nursing home for 2 years, why don't we work with our great universities and say, you can get and maybe become a nurse, or we'll give you $10,000 if you meet certain standards like I had to do. I had to get a B or better to keep going.
But again, I'm confused about where the money is coming from, because
I'm confused with your question, and I apologize.
No, that's okay, but
Yeah.
the services that are happening inside of a skilled care facility, right, they get billed to an insurance company.
Right.
You're saying there's other money?
Well, what I'm saying is that they can work with our state, right, to try to help them maybe bridge the gap, or maybe give them, incentivize them a little bit.
But is the state going to give money to a skilled nursing facility to help pay the salaries of the staff?
Well, I mean, I guess my point to you is for Lieutenant Governor, and it's a good question, right? And you want to convene a bunch of experts to say, what's the best thing that we can do here to make this situation better? I know one thing, right? We don't have enough CNAs. We don't have enough nurses. We don't have enough doctors. Now, under the hood of the Lieutenant Governor, right, and to your point, there's emergency management, there's long-term health care, and there's small business. We all have weaknesses and strengths when we come here and we run for different things. I wouldn't say that my healthcare experience is the top of the list. But what I would say is that when you go to any nursing home, any associate president or whoever's running it, they're all saying we don't have enough CNAs.
Do you take contributions from those involved in long-term care and healthcare providers?
In regards to donations, I would have to look. I've raised almost $100,000 in 70 days. I don't think I've gotten any PAC money. I would have to check with my team. In regards to doctors or nurses, I'd have to look with my team to get you better, accurate information at a later date.
All right. Okay, so let's move on. How about the environment? You want to talk about where you stand on environmental issues?
Well, I can speak to the environmental issues, but I think my biggest probably gripe at times is that for the Lieutenant Governor's office, there's the three subject areas, right, or the three. I mean, I can tell you about what I personally feel about the environment, and I can answer some of your questions. And obviously, if you get elevated, it's important for the voter to know. But I'd be interested in your questions. So what's your question about environment?
I guess there's been some pollution, dumping. I know we had Paul Pence. He's also running for Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah, I know
right?
Paul,
Yeah.
yep.
So he was here talking about some of his positions. One was the environment. Of course, he talked about elder care. We talked about, the Second Amendment.
Right.
Which one do you want to touch on first? Affordable housing. You also touched on affordable housing. Just maybe your position, just maybe what you're thinking.
Well, that's sort of a broad array of questions.
Quick. We have 10 minutes, so you can just...
So in regards to the environment, let's go specifically to what your question is about the environment. What's your question about the environment?
Let's talk about pollution and dumping in Rhode Island.
Well, that's general, but obviously most people would be against dumping.
Okay.
I was the chairman of the Warwick Sewer Authority.
Okay.
And so we had to constantly see what people were dumping sometimes.
Okay.
I was proud of that service for about about 10 years I was on that board, and it's a $300 million asset. It's a quasi, and so I learned a lot when I was the chair there and working, because Cranston and Providence is completely sewered, but Warwick was a farm town that kind of grew generally, so about 70–80% is sewered. So it was a hot topic in the city of Warwick. We made a lot of headway. They were in sort of trouble when I came on in 2007, and we had to pivot and really make some changes. And then we had that flood in 2010, and that Warwick Sewer Authority actually was immersed with water, but it's been up and running. But in regards to dumping and all those types of things, I would obviously advocate against that, illegal dumping. And in regards to the environment, I mean, it's a general question, but I think we all want to have a better environment, a safer environment.
Just in case you are elevated to
Yeah,
governor.
no, it's important. It's important policy. So yes, I'm always hoping to have our cleaner, especially our bay. And we had a lot of fish kills, especially during my tenure. And the great news is, what's going on in Providence and what Senator Chafee did back then is they have these massive tanks that if we have too much rain, it overflows into those tanks. And it prevents it from going into the ocean, which it did, and that created all of the fish kills. So I think that they just opened up some more fishing areas on the bay, and that's some huge improvement. And that's all because of the sewer authorities and their Kansas Bay Commission, coupled with the Warwick Sewer Authority, making those moves. And so I was proud of that.
Okay, Second Amendment.
Second Amendment, yes, I'm for the Second Amendment. I think that I'm also a limited government person. That's in regards to the principles and tenets of being a Republican. I think that, I also have 3 daughters, all of whom are in school, and it makes me as a parent very nervous. I would think mental health is so important. I think backing our school resource officers is important. I would probably advocate as much as I can to get students as much help as they possibly can in regards to counseling, especially if they're going through a tough time. And hopefully with that school officer who's immersed in the community. I know the one in East Greenwich. He's a great friend of mine, and that those counselors, that they can constantly talk. So if they see that red flag, they're able to communicate it the best they can to the parents and to try to prevent a tragedy.
We are down to 5 minutes. What's another issue you want to bring up?
Well, I just think that I'm really excited about running. I put it all on the line here. I left my great job at the Rhode Island Foundation to try this. I've always wanted to run. I felt like I didn't really agree with some of the policies, especially the real left policies that are happening. I think we need to get more in the middle. I'm seeing rising costs and so many different, and it doesn't mean that I can be, the cure-all of all of this. We all know that I'm Lieutenant Governor, but I do know that, through this help center, that I believe that I can, I think it's a very important. Another thing that's under with long-term health care is Alzheimer's. And
yes, when Lieutenant Dan McKee was here, he talked about his Alzheimer's plan. Yeah, you want to expand on that?
Correct. So my mother-in-law died of Alzheimer's, and it will be 5 years, September 15th. So it just imploded the family, and it was kind of unique. My wife, I knew, I played basketball with her brother, not only in high school but in college. So I knew the family very, very well. It wasn't like you had to meet the parents. I already knew the parents, and that was his older sister. But I think with being the sandwich generation, it's so
panini.
Yeah.
Some people describe it as
and you have younger children, and you have older parents, and you're in that, like, I'm 46 years old, and when these things happen, and you're running all these different directions, and you don't know what all the resources are. I was fortunate, I do know some people, but still we were stuck. We didn't really know what to do. And then...
So you found navigating through the state and care and whatnot challenging?
Well, I can't say that. What I would say is that I had resources that I knew due to my time in the governor's office where I picked up phone calls to state reps or people that knew more about it. And they might have made a call to, let's say, the Department of Health or whatever, and then it all kind of came to us.
Yeah.
Also,
I see some emotion in you now too as you talk about
yeah,
this,
and I
know?
think also with the nonprofits, there's so many great nonprofits,
Yeah.
and with the Rhode Island Foundation, I was exposed to all those great nonprofits, and they're doing such great work. But again, when you're in that panic mode, you don't know all the resources. So if you had I mean, just imagine a lieutenant governor's office taking a call and saying, this is what you need to do. This is what I would suggest. Connect with these 3 nonprofits, or this is what you should start with the Department of Health, or some guidelines, and also you can't answer all the calls, but you can get that person, like I said, to somewhere in state government or in the nonprofit community where they can help. It's Alzheimer's is a brutal disease, and I'm a man of faith. And it was one time that I actually questioned it because you can't fix it. It's very much like stage 4 cancer. When someone has it and there's prognosis and the doctor says we've done all we can do, it's awful, and we were powerless. But I will say there was so many good people that came around us and helped. And in our final days, around us in hospice, I always want to give my tip of the cap to the hospice care nurses and doctors and everything that they were doing to make her comfortable. And if that's something that I can do as a lieutenant governor to, again, make it a little easier, hopefully get our system a little bit better and advocate when needed, and also celebrate the wins. I think that sometimes in this political environment that if you all get it together, and we might have to reach across party lines or whatever, you can celebrate. I mean, I know most of the legislators up there. Some of them have retired or whatever, but especially, and I'm friends with them. We might disagree on certain policy issues, and we might have a healthy debate, but that doesn't mean I have to run out and tweet something negative and toxic, which is going on right now, especially in Washington, or run to a camera and say, and eviscerate that person. Because just because I might disagree on that particular day with that particular issue doesn't mean I can't talk to the speaker at the next issue and we can come to an agreement.
Well, come to a compromise.
Exactly.
Right? So what is going to happen? Yes, if you disagree with someone,
Well, I think that you can have a spirited debate, but then you go to compromise and compromise and try to get to the solution.
Okay.
And that's what I really want to provide Rhode Islanders with solutions with their problems, and that's why I'm running for lieutenant governor. So thank you.
I just got the 1-minute warning here, so I guess that's it.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone here.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Vote tomorrow, the
13th, September 13th,
the
Tuesday.
13th, sorry about that.
Yeah, the A train, big A all the way on election day, and I just wanted to thank you and thank the whole team.
Thank you for coming in.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right.
I'm Darlene DeRezzo. Thank you for watching. Remember that you can find us on social media. We have a Facebook account, and we have a new Instagram account at State of the State RI.